Saw when I was hosting it, that was an option. Do I just click on it? Is it simple as that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was as easy as could be. I wanted to do it to see how it worked. Okay, yeah. Perkins for Senate. Shall I change your name to Joe Perkins, is it?
It's Reed Perkins, that's correct.
Reed Perkins. Joe is a campaign manager.
Yeah, so the one, me, Reed Perkins, SD1 candidate, I'm working on my video right now. I should have it up in a second. The Perkins for Senate District 1 is what we're using to live stream this to our Facebook account.
Oh, okay. So I will not change your name.
No, they're streaming to his page too, which is great.
Hi, yep. Jennifer.
Hey.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hey there. Oh,
there she is.
How's everybody doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm recording this, and what I'll do is put it up afterwards too.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But I'm sure that it'll be available on Facebook too. So.
It says it's live on Facebook. Is it on our Facebook page then?
Yes, and then I went and shared it to the group.
Awesome.
I'm sharing it on my page as well. That seems to be working. Is there a Millen Sawney trying to get in? He's telling me he can't get in.
No.
Okay. He may be not keen.
Oh, there he is.
Something. Okay. There he is. Okay.
There's Rich.
Hi, Millen. You made it.
There we go.
Yeah, I like your haircut.
Oh, let's not talk about my haircut, please. I have little hair left. But anyway, thank you.
Sorry, Kristen. I had some trouble. I had to log off and sign back in because I'm having a little bit of trouble with my computer setup.
Uh-oh.
No worries. I'm going to have to go for a little while. A man is coming to rip out my old Jen Air. Okay.
Is Megan co-host?
Yep.
Okay, terrific. I won't worry about anything then. I'll just enjoy it.
Megan, shall I make you host while we have time?
Yeah.
So that, and you make me co-host.
Okay. Go ahead and make me host, and then I'll make you co-host.
Oh, I'm still sweating over.
I queened you.
Okay. And then go here, make co-host. Okay, there you go.
Have any of you guys read a prayer for Owen Meany?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, not recently.
It's been a long time, but I did read it.
I'm in the middle of it. I'm liking it.
Are you liking it? Yeah. It's a great one. I really enjoyed it.
It was one of my favorites that I read in high school.
Really?
And I've now read it 3 times, I think. Yeah.
All right, are we waiting for something, Megan?
Well, we were going to see if a few more people wanted to log on. It's only 6:02, so I was going to give it a few more minutes to see if some other people joined. And then if not, we'll just let you guys, I'll start off with the candidates can take as much time as they want.
And I'll share it up. I'll share it until I
Can
have
take
to
as
go.
much time as they want to talk about environmental issues or anything that you guys want to share with the world tonight. And if people come in and are commenting on the Facebook Live thing with any questions, then I'll throw them at you guys. And, you know, hopefully we'll get this wrapped up in roughly an hour, maybe less. And Kristen will then is also recording this, and then we'll share it on Facebook for people to listen to later as well.
Great.
And where do we find the Facebook Live feed? Is it on the Environmental Caucus page?
It's, yeah, I shared it onto the group and onto the page.
Cool.
I'm looking for it.
So you can share that onto your own Facebook pages now.
Oh, I see it.
Oh yeah, I see it. Very cool.
Yeah, it says other posts live now. Okay, cool. And then I think it's basically recorded there too, right?
Yes.
So people can watch it later.
Mm-hmm. We can then share it widely later, yes.
Okay, cool. Anne's on, she sees us.
Great, yes, she says that, fantastic. Okay, so it's a little after 6, we'll get started. If people start popping into the room, then we'll, into the meeting, we'll do it. But if not, we'll just wanted to take this evening to take an opportunity to introduce some people to our 2 great candidates. We have Jen McEwen, who's running for Senate District 7 in Duluth and a little bit of area around. And she has her primary election on August 11th. So we really would like to get her as a great progressive candidate into that seat. And then we have Reed Perkins, who's up in Northwest Minnesota. Have a little Northern Minnesota theme going on tonight, who's out of East Grand Forks, and he'll be on the ballot November 3rd. And his seat is really going to be key to helping the DFL flip the Senate and get some other great progressive candidates in there and start really doing some, not just passing environmental policy, but really start making some motion in a variety of policy areas that we all care about: healthcare, the environment, education. I mean, and Jen here has been endorsed by people in groups in all of those. Every time I go onto the internet, it seems like every few hours she's picked up a new endorsement, but I'll let her talk about that. So yeah, let's just get started. And like I said, if people come in or questions start coming up, I'll throw them at you guys. So we'll start with Jen, because your election is coming up first. So that's the order I'm choosing you.
Yeah, great. So you just want me to do a little introduction and overview, sort of?
Yeah, do an introduction, overview on what you want to do with environmental policy and anything else that you think that might be important for anyone watching tonight to view. Like I said, this is the Environmental Caucus, so of course we concentrate on environmental policy, but at the same time, we're all progressive voters, so.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you so much to the DFL Environmental Caucus for hosting this forum tonight, and also for all of the work that this caucus has been doing to organize DFLers across the state around this very fundamental interconnected issue that affects all of us, that we're at a really big crossroads at right now, and having to make some really big decisions coming up, and some changes in the ways that we've been doing things. So a little bit about my campaign. My name's Jen McEwen. I am a lifelong Duluthian. I love Duluth. I am very proud to have grown up here and to live here now on beautiful Lake Superior, magnificent Lake Superior, on our beautiful hillside leading down to the lake. I am running for the SD7 Senate seat, and I am challenging our incumbent state senator. Well, before I get into why I decided to run, I'll just tell you just real quickly about myself. I'm an attorney here in Duluth. I represent disabled workers against insurance companies. And I am also a former public defender. I used to do public defense work for 3 years here in Duluth. And I'm also the president of the board of the Damiano Center in Duluth. And the Damiano Center is a frontline service organization that provides meals and other resources for people experiencing homelessness and poverty in downtown Duluth. So that's just a little bit about me. I was raised in a strong union family. My dad was a public school teacher. My mom was a nurse. They were both really active in their unions, M&A and the Duluth Federation of Teachers. And, my husband is a public school teacher also. And we have 2 teenage kids in middle school and high school, and they attend our public schools as well. So that's just a little bit of my background. So I entered into this race for a variety of reasons, really, and was really struck with a sense of urgency. I think as we all were this spring with the onset of the pandemic. The pandemic really, has awoken a lot of people in perhaps new ways. I felt I was awake before, but the pandemic sort of honed everything down and made me kind of reassess what am I doing? What are my talents? What do I bring to the table? What can I offer? And running for office in this capacity just seemed like this was the natural next step of what I should be doing and what I felt called to do. So for a variety of reasons, I entered into the race, but I'll focus in on the environmental aspects of what I'd like to do because we're here with the Environmental Caucus this evening. So Duluth is a very progressive minded community. It's a DFL stronghold, a proud union region of our state, proud labor history here in Duluth, but also a very keen sense of environmentalism and progressive politics in general. So Duluth is, as I said, a DFL stronghold. We have a DFL senator, state senator right now, and those of us who are politically active had been kind of observing his votes in committee and at the Senate and had been quite disappointed over the last years at some of the stances he was taking. And, we expect our DFL representatives to walk the talk, especially when we're dealing with something as fundamental as the climate crisis and with far-reaching implications into every aspect of our lives, our economy, our health, the environment itself, so many issues. And so fundamental. We expect our DFL representation to be addressing those issues and to be acting with the urgency that the moment calls for. And we're not seeing that. We have a senator who had been voting with Republicans in committee to kind of slow pedal things, to keep fossil fuels at the center of our energy, of what we're doing with our energy, and it has just been very disappointing. And I know, and I've been working with so many Duluthians over these last years who are clamoring for us to do better, and we know that we can do better, and that we want to lead on this issue. I mean, in Duluth and in northern Minnesota, we know we live at the confluence of these 3 different systems of water running out through the St. Lawrence Seaway, water running down through the Mississippi River, and water running up north to Hudson Bay. We live at the confluence right here in the center of the continent where we're here. And we have a special responsibility, I think, living here and residing here to protect these resources and to protect the water. And to oversee our environment in a responsible way and to lead forward on things like the climate crisis. So we should be leading. We are a very progressive region here in Duluth and in northeast Minnesota. So we're ready to lead, and I think that we just needed some people to step up and make that happen. And I hope that my campaign is doing that and stepping into that space. and the people that are working on this campaign are stepping into that space. So that's just a little bit about me and about our campaign. I could keep talking, but I will stop now and give Reed, who is an amazing candidate, an opportunity also here to introduce himself and talk about his campaign. So thanks again for having us.
Thank you, and apologies that I almost wanted to signal you to keep going so I could keep fighting with my camera, but instead you'll have to deal with this still frame of me in a nearby park. Well, hi everybody. Thank you for inviting me on. Thank you for having me be a part of this. To give you a little background about myself, I was born and raised here in Minnesota. My background is as a science teacher. I have a bachelor's in biology and a master's in teaching. And I've applied those in a broad variety of places. I've taught 10th grade biology in the public schools. I've worked at 2 different national parks doing youth education at the national parks. I've worked with the Audubon Society to help do curriculum for a summer camp of theirs. And then I also ended up doing science education, all science education for a homeschool co-op down in Mississippi. So I've seen education from a broad variety of angles, and I feel very fortunate for some of the perspectives I've gotten on education, and some of the perspectives I've gotten around the country. My wife is active duty Air Force, and so we've moved around a little bit, California, Delaware, Mississippi, Iowa. But our goal was always to come back here to start our family. I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so when my wife got stationed at Grand Forks Air Force Base, we were really excited. And my thoughts turned to what can I do to give back to the state that provided me so much growing up, and that moving around, I got to see how lucky I was to be born and raised here in Minnesota. And looking around, my thoughts turned to, all right, I've done a little bit of political activism work in the past. What would it look if I threw my hat in the ring for state senate? I identified that because a lot of the DFL policies that I firmly believe in, if I ran for House, well, if the DFL didn't control the Senate, then a lot of those ideas are still bottlenecked. So looking at Senate District 1, it has a really interesting history. And I feel like too often this northwest corner of the state has been, SD7 and Duluth, people kind of expect that to be a DFL stronghold. And I feel like SD1 has this reputation, the northwest corner of the state. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's the 6 counties, literally the corner of the state. It includes East Grand Forks and Thief River Falls on War Road. But it's 6 counties. It's Polk, Red Lake, Pennington, Marshall, Kitson, and Roseau counties. And of both Democrats and Republicans up here, it sort of has this reputation of being red. Which was very bizarre to me because this district, as it kind of exists now, came into being in 1983 and was held by a DFLer for every single election from 1983 until 2016. And in 2016, the longtime DFLer retired. It was an open seat, and the Republican won it that year. But this is a seat that has been blue for every single election it has ever existed except one. This is a place where there are more independents registered than there are Democrats and Republicans combined. And it's a seat that I don't know why it has this reputation of being so red. As I've gone out and I've done a very heavy direct voter interaction campaign. I don't have a primary opponent like candidate McEwen does. I mean, I'm kind of running for the general. But I've been doing a lot of direct voter outreach. In the month of July, I'm closing in on personally making 2,000 phone calls to voters. And when I talk to people, it's not a red or blue outlook. It's all right, what are we going to do to make certain that we have healthcare access up here? What are we going to do to make certain we have childcare access up here? And then what are we going to do to ensure that our family farmers are able to compete? And this was when I originally came to the DFL Environmental Caucus for their endorsement. One of the big things that was my pitch and why I wanted this endorsement so badly is too often when we talk about environmental issues in the state, we focus on protecting the boundary waters. We focus on mining. We focus on Line 3. And I'm not saying those aren't important things to focus on. They obviously are. But when we're talking about the future of a sustainable relationship with the environment in our state, it has to start with farming, and it has to start with sustainable and regenerative agricultural practices. A phrasing that a friend of mine is rather fond of is he says, you know, instead of saying the revolution has to be a ground up revolution, he always says the revolution has to be a soil up revolution. And I really like that phrasing, and remembering that too often, and I know I've talked to candidate McEwen about how in Duluth, too often we've kind of presented with this binary of either we look after the environment or we have strong union jobs. And I consider that to be an incredibly false choice. And in my part of the state, that same thing is presented, but we say, well, either we can look after the environment or we can have strong farming. And that's just not true. We know that's not true. All of the evidence, I mean, the University of Minnesota is one of the best agricultural research facilities in the world. We know how to look after and be good stewards of our land in a way that helps the land produce for our needs and also allows us to protect that land in return. And so that's kind of where I'm coming at it from the environmentalist side. I want to make certain that farmers are included in that conversation about the environmental future of the state, because they have an incredible amount of good ideas. They have an incredible amount of necessary input for our conversations moving forward. And I'm ready to bring those voices and those needs to St. Paul in a district that, like I said, this has been cast as a red district by people who have lived here for the last 30 years and know how often it's voted for a Democrat. And so I'm ready for everybody up here to vote blue again. I'm doing a lot of work to make certain they know I'm running. And I'm excited to appear to give voice to the farmers here who are crying out saying, yeah, like, please stop corporate consolidation. That is not only killing our family farms, but it is the worst outcome that we can do for our environment up here. We have methods going forward that we know work. I'm ready to bring them to St. Paul as a DFLer and to help unbottleneck a lot of the other DFL priorities in St. Paul that also are going to be a big factor in rural living in Minnesota. I cannot emphasize the needs of healthcare and childcare in this district enough. But those back up farming, and that comes back to ag, and it comes back to our environment. So thank you again for having me on. I apologize for the lack of functional video. I suppose this is where I could plug rural broadband as an important issue as well.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Of the 6 counties that are in the district, 2 of them are the 2 bottom counties in Minnesota for rural broadband coverage. Kitson County, which is the most northwest you can be and still be in Minnesota, 44% of the people who live in Kitson County have broadband coverage. So I'll go ahead and pretend like this was a planned thing to raise awareness for that.
There's been a couple meetings I've been on like this too, like last week with the DFL Rural Caucus, where people were having issues, and we're like, prime example. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got a couple questions that have come in. We'll start with, one of is for both of you, and we'll start with Jen. So Jen, what is first on your wish list when you become senator in terms of legislation that must pass?
Oh man, there's so much work to be done that it is really hard to choose a first wish list kind of thing. And, I just want to preface what I'm going to say with just how beautifully candidate Perkins talks about the interconnectedness of these issues. They are so interconnected. So when we're talking about healthcare and we're talking about the environment, we're talking about childcare, all broadband, all of these issues are so interconnected in so many ways. So when we work on one issue that has ripple effects into other issues. So I would say, you know, my really at the top of my list right now is healthcare. I mean, I will be fighting for the Minnesota Health Plan, which is a comprehensive single-payer health care plan that Senator John Marty has already proposed to the Minnesota Legislature. And I intend to fight vigorously to have that plan adopted and to have Minnesota lead the way. I mean, with this pandemic, we have seen across the country millions of people lose their jobs. And what that means in the US when you lose your job is we know that you lose so much. It's not just a job because your health care is linked to your job. So that means that you lose your health care as well. And we also don't have an adequate safety net. Again, the interconnectivity of all of these issues. So when you lose your job, you literally could end up out on the street. You literally could end up homeless and not having the kind of security that you need to live. So it's very dire for people in the US when they lose their jobs. And to address some of that, it is way past time that we implement a Medicare for all, healthcare as a right in this country. And we can start here in Minnesota, and we need to start here in Minnesota. And it's just the public supports this. And I think that's really what we need to go back to always, to remind people there is overwhelming support for healthcare as a right, a Medicare for all type of comprehensive plan for people. It's what the juggernaut in all of this is the money. It's the insurance industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and their lobbyists. And we just need to push forward and push past that. And now is the time to do that with the pandemic upon us. It's long past time, but now is the time for us to act. So that's my number one priority. And I didn't even go into the environmental issues, of which there are so many. But obviously the climate crisis is upon us. We are about to, we're at the cusp here of a mass extinction event. And we need to act with urgency across the board and with comprehensive investments into our economy to transition into a clean energy economy. And I know that's very, very broad, but like I said, a lot needs to be done. But I intend to really push forward on the healthcare piece.
So,
myself. Reed, do you remember the question? You're good?
Yep. Okay. A genie has appeared to me and said I get one wish that only affects Minnesota politics, right? Awesome.
Yep.
So look, what candidate McEwen laid out with healthcare, obviously, and look, healthcare is a right, undoubtedly. The Minnesota Health Plan is a solid piece of legislation that Senator Marty has done an immense amount of work. Like he has done his homework. And one of the things that impressed me the most about it when I first learned about it was how he actually has a separate bill apart from the MHP to try to get a couple $1,000s from the state so that the state will run his numbers and double check all of his math. And that's how you know somebody is confident in the work that they've done and the work they're putting forward. They want the numbers public. They want everybody taking a look at it. So absolutely, but to not totally repeat candidate McEwen, if I've got if I've got my one wish, and if I'm thinking of something that's got the most ripple effects in the state of Minnesota and the most ripple effects in politics, it has to be taking a solid look at our election system. And what I mean by that is publicly funded elections and ranked choice voting, making certain that when a candidate runs for office, that they are going to win off the back of their ideas and not off the back of either the letter next to their name or the amount of funding that has been brought in. Because if we allow people, not just independently wealthy people or not members of a political class, if we allow anybody to run for office, we make certain that the needs of everybody are suddenly covered. And that's how you're going to get these ripple effects. If we're only allowing people to win a run for office if they've gotten a certain amount of donations behind them, then we're cutting out a lot of people, and we're cutting out the ideas that represent the most number of people. So by ensuring that everybody can run and that everybody's ideas get represented, we ensure that we don't just have a certain set of ag companies controlling most of the candidates from the rural part of the state. We ensure that we don't have insurance companies being the biggest funders of the people who are fighting against things like the MHP. There are a huge number of knockdown effects of getting money out of politics. And so if I've got my one wish, I want to make certain that everybody who wants to run for office is able to put themselves forward and can do so on the strength of their ideas and their work ethic, rather than, again, just, hey, I've got a certain number of friends in this industry who can each cap their donations. And look, now I can buy 10 times the amount of advertising as my opponent, and now I'm all set. I do not think that's how elections should work. I do not think that's how we get the best ideas represented. And so if I've got my one wish, there it is.
Fantastic. And Reed, I have another question for you that came in.
Sure.
And it is asking, what can the Northwest do to diversify their farming? What other crops are good to grow besides corn and soybeans? Hemp?
Sure. So largely up here, if you're looking at Northwest Minnesota, we're largely row cropping. We have a small amount of beef ranching, but not a lot. Largely corn, soy, and sugar beet. Certainly there's some wheat up here as well. I don't want to ignore wheat, but corn, soy, sugar beet, those are the big ones. But we know that if given the opportunity, a lot of these farmers would like to diversify, partially because they feel that, I mean, if you've got two family farmers who are neighbors, they know if they're growing the same crop, they're naturally undercutting each other on prices. You have more in the market, it's going to bring down the price for both of you if you're both growing the same thing. Farmers up here know it is both the economically smart thing to do and the ecologically smart thing to do to diversify crop production. One of those things is absolutely industrial hemp. I'm in favor of marijuana legalization, partly because of the options it gives to our farmers in terms of hemp production. That is absolutely something that can and should be grown up here. It's also a great, the ecological benefits of it are nice. It is a solid nitrogen fixing plant and can do some pretty healthy things for the soil on that level as well. But again, when one of the things that COVID has really shown us is the way our food supply chain is set up right now, and we've seen this especially with the meat packaging plants. When you only have 2 or 3 meat packaging plants, all it takes is for 1 or 2 of those to shut down, and now you're both backing up the supply chain so that hog farmers are having to slaughter a huge number of animals for no benefit to anybody, but also then you're hurting the consumer. You're not producing as much, and all because you've created this bottleneck. One of the big things that I've been pushing for is a decentralization of our supply chain, and by bringing processing closer to the farmer, you're allowing the farmer the option to diversify into things that otherwise might not be worthwhile transporting. If the only processing plant is on the border between Minnesota and Iowa, well, then a farmer up here isn't going to necessarily think it's worth it to send something by train all the way down there. So by diversifying and decentralizing our whole food processing chain, we can make certain that we're not just growing hemp up here, but we can look at potatoes. We can look at more barley up in this region. Northwest Minnesota has some truly fantastic microbreweries, so I'm certain they would be happy if there was more barley grown locally. We really open up the options for farmers to do what is best, rather than tying them to a specific crop that they don't necessarily want to be tied to, but it's the only economically viable thing to do. If we give farmers the option, they're going to pick the thing that is best for their land. That's the reason they have land. That's what they've been doing for thousands of years as farmers. And so changing the economics of how our food chain is and our supplies are set up we really allow the farmers the option to look at their soil quality, their water quality, and know and do what is best for them with their crops.
Great, thank you so much. That was a really thorough answer. I'm really excited at how educated you are on these issues and how well you know your district.
I'm trying.
You're doing great. Anyway, I have a question that came in from Greg Layden, who's on our Zoom chat tonight, and he is asking, what are your thoughts on having a state bank like North Dakota? So we'll start with you, Jen.
You know, I need to learn more about it. I'm not exactly, you know, I'm well versed in all of the pros and cons that people bring up with having a state bank. But in general, I'm very open to it. And I would like to see in general more government involved be in our systems. You know, I view that as increasing democracy in our economy, increasing democracy in our workplaces, increasing democracy throughout our system. So in as much as that would provide a sort of equalizing force in the banking sector in a state, that it would allow for good banking practices and sort of lead the way on that. I assume it would have to be accompanied by some various laws to kind of boost that up, the influence of the bank in the private sector and across the state. But in general, I would say that I'm very open to it and I'd like to learn more. So if you have any material, send them my way.
I'll touch on, just because North Dakota is literally like 2 miles out my window. So the North Dakota State Bank has been around for over 100 years now, which is how I originally kind of found out about it, is because locally they had a big celebration on their centennial. The North Dakota State Bank exists because of farmers back in 1920 who were really upset that all of their loans were being done through St. Paul and Chicago, but also St. Paul and Chicago controlled all of the commodity prices. And they didn't like that the same bankers were controlling both of those things, because it put the farmer in a really rough spot. A shift in commodity prices that the bank was holding could then tank the mortgage that the bank was also holding, and then the bank could foreclose the property. So North Dakota farmers didn't like that, and they said, we'll start our own bank and you can't do anything about it. And they did, and it's been working really well for 100 years. When we look at COVID, North Dakota, when we look at the recent PPP loans, North Dakota had the highest number of PPP loan disbursement per capita of any state in the country. And it was largely off the back of the State Bank of North Dakota partnering with local credit unions to ensure that there was a smooth application process, that local credit unions who knew their area best were able to say, this is the group that needs help. And the state bank was then able to back the loans made through the credit union. It was a truly amazing bit of partnership. And for North Dakota to be the only state in the country that has a system like this is pretty amazing. I know the California state legislature has been playing with this idea for a while. But again, they're our neighbors. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We know their system is working, and there's a lot we can do by just I mean, this isn't a biology test. You don't lose points for looking at your neighbor's work. It's right there. We've seen some of the successes. We've seen the successes for farmers and small businesses, and there's a lot we can learn from that State Bank of North Dakota. They also have a state mill that I get all of my flour from as well. And again, going back to, it was a farmer-backed revolution that brought these social programs into place. And the farmers of Minnesota are ready to lead that same thing again.
Fantastic. That's awesome with the state mill too.
I'll just mention that one of the other points for a state bank is the fact that we know banks really hate the idea. So probably a good idea.
That is correct, and it absolutely a point in the state.
We have a great question that came in from one of the members of our executive committee and the Environmental Caucus's legislative director, John Wells, who's watching on Facebook Live. He's asking, what can we learn about tackling, or excuse me, what can we learn about tackling our climate crisis from the global response to the COVID pandemic? Jen, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, a lot. This is, I've heard this is having been a sort of dry run, perhaps, for what is in store with the climate crisis upon us. That in some ways this has been a sort of a way for us to sort of ready ourselves for the type of disruption that we can anticipate in the next decade or so. That this is in some ways fortunate ironically, that we're able to mobilize, or at least try to mobilize and go through these experiences to see how we do, in the hopes that maybe we will come through the other side having learned some valuable lessons and be in a better place to be able to mobilize for the climate crisis and mitigate perhaps some of the effects that are anticipated. So, I mean, the good and the bad is what I would say so far. We're observing, we're in the midst of this pandemic right now. We have a very contentious national election season ahead of us. We have a lot of civil discord, a lot of sort of our institutions are being tested to the max. I think our democratic institutions and our national institutions are being pushed to the edge. So we're going to see what we're made of here these next months, and we're going to see how we do. These are really tough fundamental things that we're facing, and Reed and I were talking up earlier about this also, that, out of these tremendous challenges that we're facing, if we can do this, we can come out in a much better place than we were before all of this began. And that is the opportunity that is there and the hope that is there before us. So while we are facing really difficult times now, and we will face very difficult times ahead, we also have tremendous opportunity that can come out of these difficulties. And we have a number of historical examples of that, where we've gone through very difficult times or faced really tough challenges, but that has motivated us, and it has inspired us to rise to the occasion and to meet those challenges and to do better than we had done before. So really, I mean, that's my hope. Nationally, our politics is really in question, and we're going to put up the good fight, and we're going to do our best, and we're all hoping that we're going to come out where we need to come out in November and December, and January of next year. But I think that it comes down to that we're all in this together, across party lines, across ideologies, we're all in this together, and we're going to have to find ways to make it work. And in some ways, having to go through this pandemic, having to deal with this administration federally, having to mobilize the best we can within our state and within our municipalities to mitigate for things. Those are good practices for what we're going to have to do. And with a little bit of luck and with the hard work that all of us are putting in, my hope, and man, I'm banking on it for my kids and for myself and for our generations to come, that we're going to be able to come out of this in a better place and better for it. So that's my hope.
Thank you, Jen. Reed?
Yeah, the conversation, and I should have, I didn't have the article when I was talking to candidate McEwen earlier, and I should have looked it up since, but there was an author who I was reading who was saying in the 60s, when America saw the USSR launch Sputnik, it caused us all to question what we were doing. It caused us to double down on things like science and education, and it launched the space age and some of the prosperity for the 60s and 70s that came out of that crisis of going, oh, we're not prepared. And this author, optimistically and hopefully, but I'm glad they did it, suggested that we could look at COVID and come out the other side saying the same way that Sputnik helped launch the space age, that COVID could launch the health age. And that part of that, there are two big things to the question itself about what we can learn about how to tackle our climate crisis. One is that we are all connected. One of the things that the climate crisis forces us to reckon with is everything is interconnected systems. That no man is an island, but no industry and no country is an island either. What one country, the air above one country doesn't stay above one country. The water along a country's shoreline does not stay there. We are all in this together, in the same way that one state's mask regulations and another state's lack of mask regulations. I say this as somebody who frequently travels between East Grand Forks and Grand Forks, two states that are taking very different approaches to these things. But we are a population that moves. There's not a wall at the Red River. We are a population that intermingles, and our environment, our globe, is something that intermingles. So recognizing that this is all connected, that we are all affected by these actions. And two, the other thing that I think that the global response to COVID can teach us, not necessarily our own response here in the United States, but I think that we can take away that we can beat this. If we look to countries like New Zealand, I'm a big sports fan, and watching New Zealand have rugby matches with just the stadium full and everybody without a mask, because they haven't had a case in New Zealand in over a month. Great opening weekend for the Twins, by the way, really happy for it. But they're getting sports. We're not. They beat it. They beat it because they listened to the scientists and they had the political will to move forward with what was best under the data. Now, again, looking to our own response in the United States, we can see that ignoring the data and trying to pretend that it doesn't exist leads to the opposite effect. So looking at the global response to COVID, we can take away that, yes, we are capable as a species of managing our environment in such a way as to not self-destruct. Not to put too fine a point on it, but I mean, I have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And it really does give me pause about what are the things they are going to be facing in 15, 20, 30 years. What is the world that I am leaving to my children? And we can do it. It is within our ability to turn this ship. So not only that things are connected and that global cooperation is possible and necessary, but that it can work and that we can do this sort of a thing. It takes a great deal of political will, and I'm not going to say it's easy, but we can take away that it is doable. We are possible with this. My campaign manager is flagging me to the side. The article, the person who wrote about the Sputnik is to space age as COVID could be to health age. Her name is Regina Dugan. So if you want to look her up, that's where I got that analogy. Dugan is D-U-G-A-N. As a science teacher, I am bound by law to cite my sources as much as possible. So Dugan is where I got that. But the point that candidate McEwen made, we have been shown very explicitly that things are going wrong and that the old normal was not working. And we have the opportunity to learn from that. And we're capable of doing it moving forward. We really are. And so I hope we take away that lesson from COVID, that there are approaches to this that work. It includes listening to the scientists, listening to the data. And then, we really are capable of beating even deadly viruses that are threatening to kill a huge percentage of us. We can beat the climate crisis that is coming down upon us. We need to do so, but we can. We really can. And I hope that's the takeaway from COVID.
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing real quick? Candidate Perkins, thanks for bringing up that example that we had talked about that you told me about earlier. And I love that idea of the health age, because it does, the hope is that as we move forward, and I can tell everybody in my conversations with Duluthians, and I've had, as Reed knows, we've had so many conversations with so many people in our districts. There is this sense among people that people are ready for a new transition. They are so ready. They are ready to build a better economy and to move into a new age, into what is next, because you can feel that what we've been doing is going to have to come to an end the way that we've been doing it. We're going to have to build something new, something fresh, something that will take us in better directions. And people are ready for that. Oh man, and it's really makes me so hopeful when I talk to people who are on board with this, and so many people are. So I just wanted to mention that to people, that there really is that hopefulness out there. And the other thing that I thought of, I saw someone note in the comments about that we've learned also from this crisis that we have, and I hope people take this lesson. I don't know if they're taking it yet, but I hope that it is translated to people, that they absorb this idea that we do not live in an economy of scarcity. And I think that is a fundamental misunderstanding that so many people have, because they are squeezed economically and they are living at the margins and on the edge always of losing their livelihoods, losing their healthcare, not being able to pay the mortgage, losing their home, losing their place where they live, not being able to put their kids through college, not being able to pay their medical bills. We've been squeezed into thinking that we have scarcity, but we see, over and over again, and now so plainly, that we live in the wealthiest nation, as Bernie Sanders says over and over again. And we live in the wealthiest nation that has ever existed on the planet. And we have seen how our federal government has repeatedly spent billions, trillions of dollars on bailout packages that are designed to fix things at the top in the hopes that they trickle down. Now, we've been working this trickle down program my whole life, ever since I was a kid in the 80s. And we know that it has brought us nothing but trouble, and it doesn't work. And it's caused us lots of problems. So I really hope that people can take that lesson and look around and say, how is the federal government able to make those payouts to keep things, keep the status quo going, and to keep the wealthiest, the outrageously wealthy people where they're at the top? And we have these resources. We have so much wealth in our nation, more wealth than we've ever had. We can make these investments. We can transition to a clean economy. We can solve so many of the ills that we have. We just need the political will to make those resources work for everybody, and not to have them cordoned off at the top. So sorry to digress, but that's one lesson that I really hope that people will eventually take from the crises that we're dealing with.
Not a digression at all. That was exactly what needs to be said right now. You're 100% right.
Well, thank you both for that. That was really great. And one of our people that's here on the Zoom call tonight is Milan Sahoni, and he's running for city council in Plymouth. And he just made a comment that we do not live in scarcity, but we do live in a country where the wealth is in the hands of the few, and those few who are unwilling to share the wealth. So thank you for that, Milan, and best of luck to you and your city council campaign as well.
Yeah, that's right on.
Yeah, so we're getting close to 7. So I was just gonna ask one last question of you guys, if that's okay. And if any more questions come up between now and then, we'll do it all as well. But one question I think would be fun. I'm gonna kind of tag on to the first question we had that came from our chair, Vita, about the genie in the magic bottle wish legislation. But let's do that on in the environment. What do you guys think is the most pressing environmental issue in your district? And when you are elected, I'm not saying if, because it's going to be a when with you two. You guys are such great candidates. When you are elected, what do you hope to do as far as getting legislation passed to address that pressing environmental issue?
I'll speak to an issue that I would love, because it addresses a lot of the needs kind of in one go. My wife went to the University of Iowa. I lived there for a while. I had an Iowa driver's license, and to this day, on Iowa driver's licenses, they have the image of a wind turbine on the license. Don't get me wrong, our loon was better, but they had a wind turbine. And when you drive I-80 across the center of Iowa, you cannot help but see the mixed use land that combines row cropping with wind production. Having those sorts of investments, making certain that we are giving local farmers that ability for mixed land use, and that we are encouraging that practice and actively facilitating those partnerships between energy co-ops and those farmers. It does a bunch of things. One, it obviously gets us towards the eventual goal of having a fossil fuel free economy as a whole, as a state, which has a huge number of trickle-down effects from both pollution, along with climate, the climate crisis. Getting away from fossil fuels has a huge number of effects. But not only are we getting away from fossil fuels, we are reinvesting in our local economies, and we're reinvesting in our small farmers. We are ensuring that on years where maybe the weather is bad, our rain up here has been truly awful lately, and it's putting a real dent in some of the farmers. And not the last fall, we had just a terrible harvest season as well. Well, if there's bad weather, guess what that means? The wind was blowing more. So by giving farmers that ability to stabilize their own economies and stabilize their own well-beings, don't get me wrong, that also goes back to the healthcare that candidate McEwen talked about, and giving them control of that helps because, hey, it's all interconnected. But giving farmers that stability, again, decouples them from that pressure of, I have to grow this crop because this crop is the one that's most likely for me to turn a profit. And that means I have to do this one, or else the family farm that I've had for 100 years goes under, and I don't want to be responsible for that. And I don't think anybody can blame them for, when they're backed into that corner, the sort of decisions they have to make. By empowering those local farmers, by encouraging mixed land use, we get ourselves away from fossil fuels. We help our small towns by making certain those local energy co-ops exist, which creates stability for the small town. And we free up the farmer to ensure that they are doing the things that they know are best for their land, and that they are stewards of that land in a way that only they can be. And they're not pressured into that by market forces. So mixed land use, and making certain that Iowa is not the only Midwest state to be so proud of their wind turbine usage. There's my my SD1 environmental impact.
Fantastic, thank you. Jen, what would you say is the most pressing environmental issue in SD7? And when you're elected, what do you want to do in the legislature to address it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't wait to be in the Senate with Reed Perkins. I can't wait to work with work with you on legislation and moving things forward. It's so exciting, all the things that you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I would say, for SD7 is Duluth, Minnesota. And this is a particularly difficult question when we're just talking about environmental issues, I think, because I would say that for Duluthians, what I have heard over and over, and I know that is really keen with my own concerns, is the threat of the copper nickel sulfide mining on our economy, on our environment here in Duluth, on Lake Superior, which really is the heart of our community up here. I don't know if everybody knows, but in Duluth is on a hill, and it's on Lake Superior, and wherever you are in Duluth, pretty much you can kind of turn around and look over your shoulder, and there's Lake Superior extending out to the horizon. It's magnificent, and it is why most Duluthians love living here, and it gives us so much spiritually, economically, in our community. It really provides an identity of who we are. So when I'm just talking about pure Duluth, I think that we need to revamp our permitting processes. I'm going to take a really close look at how something like a polymet could have gotten as far as it has. We need to change the sort of framing that is set out in our law, which, as I understand it right now, it's pretty much set up as a sort of, let's develop Minnesota's natural resources, and let's just set a couple, some bars that people have to pass to be able to go forward with their project, which we want them to do. And I think that probably served Minnesota well for a long time, but as we're facing the climate crisis and the changes that we're seeing, we need a new framework. We need to look at these extractive industry projects with a real clear cost-benefit analysis that takes into account public health, that takes into account the environment itself and the value, the various types of values that the environment brings, the water, the land, the wetlands, and really do a comprehensive assessment when someone comes forward with an extractive project like that. I mean, we're in a situation right now where we have an international corporation, Glencore, that has a terrible record with labor, with environment, coming to our region of northeastern Minnesota, setting up a small shell company, Polymet, and then what was the plan all along to now take over the majority share of Polymet, so that it's Glencore, basically. It's an international corporation, and the plan is to take out that wealth, to extract that wealth, copper, in the form of that copper, to make as much money as they can and to leave. And we will be left with what they leave. And all of the science tells us that the dam that they've proposed will fail. It's just a matter of when it will fail. And we'll see the copper mine drainage coming from that project down through the St. Louis River and into Lake Superior. It would be disastrous. It would be a disaster. So people are rightfully in Duluth really alarmed that project has moved forward in the way that it has moved forward, and that we haven't really had a full airing of the costs and the benefits of this proposed project, and that it's really being kind of rammed down our throats with such dire consequences for our entire community throughout. But the reason I said it's hard, so that's for Duluth. I'd be representing Duluth, and in my Senate district, that is what people are talking about and worried about and thinking about. But I'm keenly aware that the economic distress that has created the sort of pathway for a Glencore to come to our region and to propose a project like this, that economic desperation that people are feeling is real, and it should not be cast aside. It should not be belittled. It should not be minimized in any way. Because as I said before, when people don't have a job in the US, it's not like not having a job in other developed nations, where at least you get your health care. You probably have a better social safety net, so maybe you won't lose your home. Maybe you'll be able to stay where you were living. Maybe you'll have an income that'll carry you through until you can find something. Your public education is taken care of. You're not worried about your kids being able to go to college. They're going to be able to do that. We don't have those things. So, I've seen in my work with homelessness here in Duluth and at the Damiano Center, these are real fears and justified fears that people have about not having work. It's not some kind of selfish thing. It's not that they're not thinking long-term even. It's that they're actually literally worried about being able to feed their families. And I think as environmentalists, it's really, really important for us to approach these climate crisis issues in the way that we're going to transition to a clean energy economy from that economic understanding that we're going to have to hit this on the front end big time with investments in that transition to a clean economy that is going to be high-paying, living wage union jobs for people, where they're going to have good benefits and they're going to be able to take care of their families. So, and again, as Reed Perkins said so beautifully, this is all interconnected, right? So if we work on the healthcare piece, if we work on the social safety net pieces, other things shift and change. But those economic concerns are they're so dire. And that really is the key to so many of the ills that have led us to where we're at right now. So in my district, I'd be working on those permitting process, but with a real eye toward the base of the problem is alleviating that economic insecurity for people to the point where we're going to be able to bring everyone along and not be infighting amongst ourselves.
I want to just to emphasize what candidate McEwen said, which was so important. These economic fears are real. And whether it's a union worker or a farmer, when we're talking about something like the climate crisis, which is a disaster that's unfolding over decades, it is difficult when somebody is saying, okay, but I can't eat tomorrow. Acknowledging that and coming at this from the perspective of, yeah, the Green Revolution is going to include an economic revolution and jobs that has to happen. When I talked about the mixed land use, those wind turbines, they're not going to get built by themselves. That's union labor that will put up those wind turbines. And making certain that as environmentalists, we emphasize this, that these policies we're putting forward do take care of the economy in a sustainable way that the path we're currently on doesn't. So thank you, candidate McEwen, emphasizing that these fears are real, they need to be legitimized, and we need to point out that the environmental path is the long-term sustainable path to alleviate those economic fears. That is so important, and thank you for bringing that up.
I'm muted. Thank you both so much for all of that. It's just a little past 7 now. So, once again, our other candidate for Plymouth City Council on this, Colmel and Sahoni, just wanted to say thanks to you both for your clear and concise thought process about your values and your platforms. And he wishes you nothing but the best for your runs in state senate. And I just couldn't have said it better myself. So like I said, we're just a little after 7 here. So I just want to give our if nobody has any other questions, just wanted to give our candidates a couple minutes each, or however long they want to take each, to have any closing thoughts on this. And I will just do their quick plug for them each. You can go on their websites. Jen is votemcEwen.com. Reed is perkinsfremen1.com. Volunteer for these candidates. Donate to these candidates. Jen especially has this primary coming up on August 11th, and a lot of us are trying to do all hands on deck to help her. And Reed's seat is going to be so critical to flip come November 3rd. So at that, I will let our candidates have their closing thoughts if nobody else has any questions. Okay.
I just want to second what Megan said. Please get your friends involved. You are all already involved, I know. Jen has to win this primary, and we have to flip the Senate. So these are the two of the people, but this is really important and critical. And I know Jen has a great setup with phone banking and helping her just, let her know, let me know, let anybody know to get people in there. And these are the two DFL endorsed candidates.
Yes, they are both our DFL. Oh, I'm sorry, Greg. Yes, they're both the DFL endorsed candidates. They're DFL Environmental Caucus endorsed candidates. If you go to the websites that I mentioned before, you can scroll down and see the dozens of endorsements that Jen has picked up, and Reed's list is growing as well. And so we're both very excited. So with that, like I said, we'll have some closing comments. We start with Jen, as we've been doing.
Okay. Oh, thank you all again so much for all of the work that you have done as a caucus. I am a member of the caucus, and I've kind of taken somewhat of a leave here while I campaign and work on my campaign. But this caucus is so active and so robust and raising awareness in ways that is really transformative for our DFL. So I can't thank this caucus enough for all of the work that you have done. The work that this caucus has done and many others had really set the stage for me being able to make a run like this as well, and for people like candidate Perkins and myself to really move forward and to do a run like this and to be successful. So thank you. Yeah, the election, as I said in Duluth, this is a DFL stronghold. The election is coming up on August 11th, and many people have already voted. They are voting right now as we speak. My uncle just told me that he returned his ballot today in the mail. So we can use all hands on deck, and and I do think it's important for people watching this to know that in this primary, my candidacy was endorsed by the DFL. So I am the DFL endorsed candidate. Sometimes when we see volunteers, they're not endorsed by the party, but I am the DFL candidate, proudly so. So it would be wonderful if people who would like to get involved are able to make some calls for us, to reach out to people in our district who maybe are just starting to tune in on the race and starting to pay attention to what's going on, to make sure that they know that the challenger is the DFL endorsed candidate and has a wide coalition, a broad coalition of environmental, labor, community organizations really lining up to get behind a more progressive, more forward-looking vision that really has a sense of this urgency of the moment and the kinds of hard work, but exciting work that we are ready to do and needing to do now. So thank you very much for having both of us. And it is such a pleasure to hear these questions and also to hear from candidate Perkins, who I said is just such an exciting candidate and really, I think, embodies my hope for what we could do politically in more rural areas. He's so true to his values and at the same time is just so real with people. I think he's going to be a great success, and it's so wonderful to be able to look forward to flipping the Senate with a candidate like Reed Perkins. So thanks again for having us both. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank both the DFL Environmental Caucus for inviting me to take part in this. Thank you, candidate McEwen. It has been, when I saw that I was getting the chance to appear with you, like doing some background research, finding out about the amazing things that you've done for Duluth. But then additionally, that idea of that you stepped forward to challenge a sitting DFLer and saying, no, we can do better than this. We are capable of putting a better image forward from Duluth to represent our progressive values here in northern Minnesota. That's the sort of party involvement that we need, making certain that yeah, we're ready to stand up for the values of our community, that the letter next to our name is not the most important part of our identity, that the values that we hold true to and what we can bring to St. Paul is so important. And it's been great to get a chance to appear with you like this. And look, I mean, if you go to my website, perkinsformn1.com, if you look under the endorsements, the DFL Environmental Caucus is the top endorsement on the page. This was the first endorsement that I sought out as a biology teacher, as somebody who has proudly worn the National Park arrowhead on my sleeve for years. This was an extremely important early bellwether of my campaign. I'm not joking when I said internally, I said to my campaign manager, if I can't get this endorsement, like, I don't know who else I can convince. Like, if I can't convince the Environmental Caucus that these are issues that are important to me, I'm going to have a real trouble convincing anybody else. So this is this was an extremely meaningful endorsement for me, both personally as well as for my campaign. And this has been such an exciting campaign for me. Look, throwing my hat in the ring and deciding, yep, I'm going to try this. I had a lot of preconceptions about what that would mean, of getting out and talking to farmers, talking to Trump voters. I mean, I've got a county in my district, Roseau County, that went for Trump by 40 points. I went up for the county fair last year. I fought to make certain that we had a DFL booth at the county fair in Roseau County. And I went up there for 2 days. I sat at the booth at the Roseau County Fair. I had maybe one person come up to me with some negative thoughts, and normally if I had my camera on, I would show you. So it still sits in my wallet. So we left the first night, came back second morning, ready to set up the booth. And my campaign manager and I saw down the road, there was a note for us written on the table. And both of us were a little concerned, like, what was this going to say? And what it read, and again, it sits in my wallet to this day. It says, "Thanks for being the Democratic presence. We appreciate it." And then there's a little smiley face. And that is this district. This district responds to people who show up. This district responds to people who tell it, who give them explanations, who tell them why they believe it is, who are willing to be there and put these issues forward, and to give rural Minnesota the loud voice that we know it deserves, because the issues that are affecting rural Minnesota are the issues that are affecting the state. We can look at the environmental impact of farming and making certain that our small farmers are the stewards of our land. We can look at the impact of healthcare and childcare, both issues that have been talked about tonight that candidate McEwen touched on as well. These are the values that I'm fighting for. And as I've gone around this district, me showing up and telling people I'm fighting for these values, regardless of the letter next to the name of the person who I'm talking to, they've responded. I'm ready to flip Senate District 1, and I'm ready to have Senate District 1 be one of the seats that flips the Minnesota State Senate back, so that we have a trifecta control of our state government, so that we can get some of the policies we've talked about tonight, along with a litany of other issues that you just can't squeeze into an hour evening. But I'm really glad that everybody here was able to share an hour of their evening with candidate McEwen and myself. I wish her nothing but the best in terms of her upcoming primary. I have great confidence that with the passion that she's demonstrated in her actions in the community over the last decade, along with the policies that she speaks so well on, she's ready to win this primary. She's ready to head to St. Paul to represent Duluth. And I greatly look forward to, we've had several chats now entirely over Zoom or on the phone together. And I cannot wait until January when Jennifer McEwen and I can sit down for a coffee or a beer together in St. Paul and talk about the agenda that we know will help Northern Minnesota, that we know will help the Environmental Caucus, and that we know will help Minnesotans as a whole. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for tonight.
Let's give them all a big blue applause.
Big blue applause. I love it, Greg. Yes. Thank you guys all for joining us here on the Zoom call, everyone who's watching on Facebook Live. And yeah, I just got to say thank you to technology. We're able to be here. I see just looking at this, I think we've got 7 out of our 8 Senate districts in the state represented between who I'm seeing on the Zoom call and who I'm seeing watching on Facebook Live for a candidate forum across Northern Minnesota, stretching from the Wisconsin border to the North Dakota border. This is just so incredible, and being able to reach so many people on Facebook Live and using this as well. So yeah, thank you for everyone for joining us tonight. If anyone else has any final thoughts, Vita, as our chair of the DFL Environmental Caucus. Okay.
I do just want to thank you, Megan, for finding these amazing candidates. You did excellent work up in
They found us.
8, and Rich also. And, this has been fantastic. Listening to this, I could not be more excited that we endorse both of these candidates. They are going to go far, and we're going to put everything we can behind them. So thank you all for everything you're doing. I know this is difficult, having to do everything by Zoom and phone, but go. We gotcha. This is going to be awesome. So thanks again. And thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yes. Okay. Well, you guys will have a great night. Best of luck to our candidates. Like I said, visit their websites, donate, volunteer, phone bank, put out signs, whatever. There's tons of ways to contact them. I know Jen's running a great phone banking program right now, just everyone logging on virtually. So, and Greg Layden, who's on this call right now too, he's the DFL Environmental Caucus's chair of the campaign committee. So not just our two candidates that we have on tonight, but any candidates coming up for primaries between now and November 3rd that have been endorsed by the Environmental Caucus, we are really, he's the one to talk to about how we can help out. So don't hesitate to reach out.
We're posting it, reach out to you. We're posting that stuff on our Facebook page too. So join the Environmental Caucus if you're not a member.
Mhm.
Yeah, and also become a member of the Environmental Caucus if you're not a member. And follow us on Facebook. You'll get great information about all of our candidates. So best of luck to you, Jen, on August 11th. I wish I lived in Duluth and could vote for you.
Thanks so
I'm
much.
here about 100 miles away from each of you. Same thing with Reed. You guys I'm stuck in SD3. I don't want to say stuck, but I'm here in SD3. Stone's throw away from 7 and 1. And, you know, you guys, I wish I could move with my feet and help you guys out. But yeah, so thank you so much for everyone who was here tonight and put this together and helped.
Sure.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, good night.
Really appreciate it. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, stop the live stream. All right.